Hello friends, welcome to the fantastic world of stories and why we tell them from Culture Katha. In this series, as you know, we're looking at many interesting but unexplored aspects of the great Indian epic, the Mahabharata. This week's video, as always, is going to be different. On the occasion of Women's Day, I want to dedicate this video to some of the wonderful women from the Mahabharata. Women without whom there would be no story, no Mahabharata today. Of course, when it comes to talking about admirable women from the Mahabharata, Draupadi is typically the first choice. But Draupadi is not the only one. There are many more such equally fiery and fantastic women who need to be celebrated for their courage, their presence of mind, their intellectual capability, their grasp of dharma, apart from, of course, their often praised virtues. In this video, let's look at 4 such wonderful women from the epic. Satyavati was born a fisherwoman, but she was so beautiful that even a sage who was said to have mastered his senses coveted her. But it was not her beauty that defined her. It was her presence of mind, her persuasive skills, her ability to negotiate and overcome tough situations that make her a powerful woman of the epic. The story goes that once when she was a fisherwoman, plying passengers across the Ganga, she was overpowered by sage Parashara, who coaxed her into having intercourse with him. Fearing his curse and overcome by his energy, she consented to satisfy his desire, but asked the sage for 2 boons in return. One, that her body odor, that was the stench of fish, would be replaced by a pleasant, attractive fragrance. And 2, that her virginity would be restored after intercourse with him. The sage readily agreed, and from their union was born Krishna Dvaipayana, alias Vedavyasa, the author of the epic. Again, later in the epic, we find that it was her fragrant body odor that attracted Shantanu, the king of Hastinapura. Marrying him, she became the queen of Hastinapura, whose son later ascended the Kuru throne. And that was how Satyavati turned a difficult personal situation into an advantageous one for herself. From being a mere fisherwoman, she became the queen mother of Hastinapur. Again, as queen, when she was faced with the situation of an heirless kingdom, she took up matters in her hands and resolved the situation by requesting her son Krishna Dvaipayana to impregnate her son's widows. Thus were born Pandu and Dhritarashtra, characters that are central to the epic story. And so it was that without Satyavati, there would have been no Kuru clan, no Kurukshetra war, and of course, no Mahabharata. Kunti, well known as the mother of the Pandavas, is yet another complex but interesting woman character from the epic. Although she was a biological mother to only Yudhishthira, Bhima and Arjuna among the Pandavas, she treated her co-wife Madri's sons, Nakula and Sahadeva, as her own. In fact, as I had already mentioned in my earlier video on Madri's death, Madri chose to ascend the funeral pyre of her dead husband Pandu instead of Kunti because Madri felt she would never be able to treat Kunti's sons impartially, whereas she was confident that Kunti would treat Nakula and Sahadeva as her own children. Well, as one can imagine, to have earned such deep respect and reputation from a co-wife was no small deal. Kunti is one of the important characters who travels through the long epic, remains with her sons through their difficult times, guiding and advising them as required. Although brought up and wedded into a royal household, Kunti is forced to spend most of her life suffering hardship and living the life of a forest dweller or a refugee. When discussions around the prospects of war arise, it is Kunti who goads the Pandavas to follow the Kshatriya dharma, take up arms and fight. In fact, when Krishna goes to the Kuru court as the Pandava emissary but fails to negotiate peace with the Kauravas, Kunti takes the opposite position. She sends word through Krishna to her sons, particularly Yudhishthira, urging them not to shy away from war, to rise up to the occasion and perform their Kshatriya dharma. Well versed in the ways of dharma, she chastises her sons for being weak-kneed and dragging their feet in a vain attempt to avert the war. So in a sense, it is Kunti who gives her sons the first call for action, much before Krishna does to Arjuna on the Kurukshetra battlefield. As a mother-in-law, we find Kunti being sympathetic to the Draupadi. She continuously reminds her sons about the insults and molestation that Draupadi had to bear while they remained mere helpless spectators. She states strongly that it would not be proper for the Pandavas to forgive what happened to Draupadi. Being a Kshatriya woman, she expects her sons to go to war, not just to reclaim their kingdom or to settle scores with their cheating cousins, but also, or more importantly, to avenge the insult of Draupadi, which in Kunti's opinion was unforgivable. After the war is over, and when the Kuru family elders, including Dhritarashtra, Gandhari and Sanjaya, retire to the forests, Kunti decides to join them. Her parting words at the time of her departure are ones of remorse for what she did to Karna. She blames herself for not revealing the secret about Karna's birth to the world when he was still alive. She requests her sons to remember him as their eldest sibling and give away gifts in his name. And very interestingly, in her final words to her sons, she advises them to remain dedicated to Draupadi and follow the path indicated by her. So that was Kunti, as real a woman as any other of the modern world. Gandhari was Kunti's counterpart in the Kaurava camp. Wife of Dhritarashtra and a mother to 100 sons, Gandhari is a voice of reason in the Kaurava camp. Just as much as Kunti instigates her sons to fight for their rights, Gandhari takes the opposite position. She keeps warning both her husband Dhritarashtra and her elder son Duryodhana that war may not be the best solution for the conflict. She is convinced that a war with the Pandavas would lead to total destruction of the Kuru clan. Gandhari comes across as a very shrewd judge of character and is sure that the clan's elders, including Drona, Bhishma and Kripacharya, would never fight the Pandavas with their full might. After all, both the Kauravas and the Pandavas were equally dear to them. Gandhari believed that the kingdom rightfully belonged to Pandu and therefore subsequently to his sons, the Pandavas. So she actually chastises Duryodhana for desiring a property that was not his by right. Even when the war becomes imminent and Duryodhana comes to seek her blessings, she finds herself unable to wish him absolute victory. She only says, Yatho dharmas tatho jaya, meaning victory will come to the righteous. Although she fairly knew how the war would end, as a mother she is extremely traumatized to know about the death of all her sons, all her 100 sons. In the Stree Parvan, known as the Book of Lamentations, where Gandhari laments the death of 100 sons, she pitiably asks Bhima why, of all her sons, he didn't spare even one. One son, if alive, would have given her and her husband, the blind king Dhritarashtra, the much needed moral support in their old age. A question that Bhima finds himself unable to answer. In fact, all the Pandavas hang their heads in shame when confronted by Gandhari. And finally, it is Gandhari alone who has the moral authority to demand Krishna why he didn't stop the war when he very well could have. She holds him responsible for the annihilation of the entire Kuru clan. She then curses Krishna that his clan too would meet the same end as the Kurus, that all his sons would die and Krishna too would die a horrible death. At this point, even Krishna accepts her curse meekly. Indeed, Gandhari was one hell of a woman, a character that leaves a very deep mark on anyone engaging with the Mahabharata. And finally, we come to one character from the epic who's unlike any other. This character is Sulabha, a female ascetic and philosopher. Her story is told in the Shanti Parvan of the epic. Unlike Satyavati, Kunti or Gandhari, Sulabha does not play a role in the core story of the epic, but her story is narrated as part of the several upakyanas or subplots in this Mahabharata. According to the story from Shanti Parvan, Sulabha enters into a debate with King Janaka of Videha over the question of what can fetch ultimate liberation or eternal salvation from birth and death. Is it action or renunciation? King Janaka initially refuses to take Sulabha seriously, as he does not expect a woman to debate philosophical questions, let alone be a renunciate or an ascetic. This should sound familiar to most women who battle stereotyping and typecasting every day of their lives. Anyway, coming back to the Sulabha story, Sulabha, with her deep knowledge of philosophy, manages to shake off Janaka's initial disbelief. While Janaka believes that ultimate liberation is not for the woman, Sulabha vehemently disagrees and presents very coherent arguments how only the body has gender while the Atman does not, and therefore women are as capable of spiritual liberation as men. Sulabha's is a game-changing role in Indian tradition that always linked women's spiritual powers to her chastity and dutiful service to her husband. And here was Sulabha, who did not believe in marriage and chose instead to follow the path of renunciation to attain moksha. Sulabha's arguments in favor of her position leave the king stunned. Sulabha is definitely a character we should all cheer for. Of course, there are many more women in the epic who should be celebrated, women we should root for, such as Ulupi, Damayanti, Hidimbi, Savitri, and so on. These women were clever, quick to action, courageous, expressed their will, exercised their choice, and got what they wanted. Friends, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe. Subscriber friends watching this, please remember to press the bell icon to receive notifications on new video uploads. Till we meet again over yet another interesting story from the greatest story ever told, it's Tata bye-bye and take care. Throwing a proud Women's Day wish to every woman watching this. Girls, you rock.